Hey everybody, so we are live, and before we jump into the interview here, before I begin to interview our guest, I will just inform everybody how it's going to work. And the way that it works is that I do have a scripted set of questions that I will begin with, and after that I will introduce verbally when you're available to begin typing out audience questions. So without further ado, hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, respective of where you are in the world. My name is Mark Allard-Will, and I'm your host today. But as you can see, I'm not alone. I'm joined all the way from Kuwait, live, by manga and comics writer Hisham Najem. Hisham, could I ask you to introduce both yourself and your work to the viewers, please?
Absolutely. So my name is Hisham Najem. I'm a writer. I write comics. I've been writing since I was around 26, so that's about 4 years ago. My first book published was Shinigami Sensei, Volume 1, and then moved on to write Daizuguru in Volume 2. Daizuguru is more of a comedy, and to tell you the truth, I enjoy writing comedy more than something serious. But Shinigami Sensei is my brainchild. So it's one of my favorites.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Would you need a longer introduction, or is that good?
That's perfect for sure. And before we go any further, I am just going to play a trailer for Hisham's work, the manga Shinigami Sensei. All right, and we're back. Something that I was really surprised to learn while I was researching both yourself and your work is that manga has a really big following in Kuwait and the wider UAE. In your opinion, why is this?
Well, in Kuwait, as a Kuwaiti, I'm going to speak for Kuwait. I think the Gulf regions are similar. The older generation, I'm talking about generations from the 70s all the way up to the millennials, we had Arabic cartoons, and these cartoons were actually Japanese anime, and that they were dubbed over in Arabic. So you had all sorts of things like Captain Tsubasa, we called Captain Majid, Tiger Mask, we called Nimble Muqanna, Messenger, Grendizer, which are just the same in Japanese. So there was a lot of Japanese following that had kind of like a root of Arabic, I don't know, writing in it, because a lot of the animations were changed a little bit to be more appropriate for the Arabic population. So already you had the older generation with that kind of mindset. So the younger generation kind of just pick up where they left off, and you get lots of new animes coming in. Manga is actually more popular now than it used to be, especially when it comes to Kuwaitis. We're having a lot of like comic book stores that specialize in manga. So a lot of Kuwaitis now are reading manga more. When I started, and I remember in the conventions, they used to tell me the same thing. They'd be like, I watch anime, but I'm not big on manga. But the conventions that I do now, everyone's talking about like they're big on reading and they're really into that. So it has changed over the years, but we had like a Japanese influence since I want to say around the 70s.
Fantastic, thank you. So following on from that last question, your webcomic manga series, Shinigami Sensei, is firmly set in a manga style with dialogue and narrative in English. What was it that focused you on those two things as creative choices for that finished product?
Oh, Shinigami Sensei was my first work, and originally it had nothing to do with Japan. The name wasn't even Shinigami Sensei. I really wanted this to be a movie, so I even the way I write it in text format, I write it as a script, like a movie script. So I wanted to start a movie, and I wanted to go through to Sundance. And it was John Wick before John Wick, I promise you. And then I felt that it would be a real long route, and it didn't seem very realistic to make it a movie. So I went on to a novel. So I changed it a little bit so that it can be more of a written work. Then I felt that the Kuwaiti people don't read novels so much, and I wanted to I wanted something that they could enjoy and something they could pick up and enjoy quickly. So at the time, I was watching an anime, and it had finished so abruptly. And me wanting to know more about the story, I started reading a manga for the first time. So the time I started writing Shinigami Sensei as a manga, I had only read one manga. It was an anime named Bleach. And I said, this is perfect. And then as writing in a manga style, I started to add more of the Japanese themes, and then it kind of took up a life of its own. It kind of built itself. When it comes down to the art style, because I wanted it more of a manga style, I had my artist, Hannah Phillip. He was like big on manga and anime, and he was already writing in that style or drawing in that style. So it kind of picked up. It was like a brotherhood that was formed that both of us kind of needed.
That's fantastic. That's really interesting to hear as well, because I speak to so many creators who do have that transition process of aiming to set something as a movie, but realizing that with budget constraints and stuff like that, it's so much easier to make a graphic novel. So your answer there is really eye-opening, really, to see that also happens with manga. So your work on Shinigami Sensei has been hugely popular, with your print run of the paperback edition for the 2017 Dubai Comic Con selling out completely. In your opinion, what does it take to make a successful manga series?
Ooh, what does it take to make a successful manga series? This one's like, we could do like a 2-hour talk on that one, but let me try to make it concise. So the story is the essence of the manga, right? And again, as a writer, as a storyteller, what do we do? What a writer's main objective is to invoke emotion, right? Whether it be sadness, fear, happiness, all sorts of emotions that you want your reader to feel. It's your job as a writer to pull that out of them, and your work is what is the medium. So the story is number one for a successful manga. The art, now this is very interesting. The art should be, I guess that word, interesting. It doesn't have to be absolutely beautiful. It doesn't have to be a Picasso work of art. It can be extremely, extremely rudimentary, simple. If you've seen Cyanide and Happiness, they're literally stick figures, but their success is immeasurable. So art is not the center of manga, although people do take that very seriously. If you want to talk about manga, I don't know if I should say this. I don't know. I'm on the fence on that. There are certain tropes or certain themes that you can follow so that it's easier for someone who reads manga to pick up your work. So it would be best to read certain mangas just to understand the feel of it, the certain like how they climax the stories, certain ideas of character development that we see in different echelons of manga. We get like shonen, which is for people under 17, seinen, those who are above 17. You get different tropes, different methods, different climaxing methods, different themes in either one. So you need to choose which audience. That's basically just like the meat of it. When it comes down to, I'm self-published, so I don't know how to do anything with a publisher. But when it comes down to the work, you know how they say don't judge a book by its cover? That's not true. Make sure you have a really nice cover that kind of really brings people in. I think the biggest success of Shinigami Sensei Volume 1 and the reason why people are buying Shinigami Sensei Volume 2 is because the cover was like the most interesting part of the experience of picking up the book from my booth. I hail from Kuwait, and those people who see, oh, you're Kuwaiti, you're like me, you're a writer, I'll be interested. But it's the cover that gets them to pick it up. So that would be like also something very important to get your book out there. So it's got to catch plenty of eyes. Other than that, you want to see if you can get yourself a reading base. What I did was I made sure that a good part of my book was free online. So I wanted people to go and read my work, to sample my work, say, I like the way he does things. Let me go buy his book. So that's, as someone who's self-published, a good way to get people to read your work and just to be familiar with who you are. Now, publishing companies usually do a lot of advertising themselves, which is great. But there are trade-offs when you go publishing or self-publishing.
Fantastic, thank you. That's a really wonderful answer and very well-rounded look at how to achieve that. But for writing for comics and manga, that is something that is considerably different to writing for prose, for example, for novels. Anybody can go online and find a wealth of free information about writing for novels, but there's markedly less info on writing for comics. For anybody watching today who may be interested in writing for comics, what one piece of advice would you give for beginning to write for comics?
Okay, I wanted to quote Stan when I saw that question. I was really excited, actually. Stanley, he said, if you have a genuine idea that you believe in, don't let some idiot tell you otherwise, or some idiot talk you out of it. Me, in the very beginning, I first thought that the moment I come out with a good piece of work, that looks nice and it's got a lot of pages in it, that people are gonna, especially those professionals who would try to accept the work or who would want to accept the work, would eat it up. They'd go crazy for it. I've been to Japan. I've spoken to publishers in Japan. I've spoken to publishers in Dubai. I've spoken to people who are interested in sponsoring in Kuwait. You're not going to get that, wow, give me your work. It's almost like they're going to stop you. So you may feel like there's some kind of resistance. And that's, for me, as a beginner, starting off, it was heartbreaking. I thought that, oh, my work's not good enough. Perhaps I should stop. But something very interesting, and this especially in manga, there are two very, very famous mangas that went on to have extremely amazing anime adaptations. The first one was Attack on Titan, and Attack on Titan, the writer, the story is very different, right? And the writer had gone to publishers, and they laughed at him. And they said, no, that's not going to be a good idea. Boom, big success, worldwide success. And the second thing was One Punch Man. I don't know if it's really big in Kuwait, and I hear it's really big in the States. The art for One Punch Man was comical. So how simple it was. And at first glance, publishers today would be like, this is garbage. But the content, the story, the emotion it invokes, they ate it right up. They saw such a big online following. And then they said, no, we have to jump on this. So believe in your work. You are the main driving force of your work. No one can make you, no one's going to raise you up. You're going to do it yourself, and then they'll accept you later on. So take these two big stars who today have become stars as an example. At the very beginning, people were like, it's not going to happen. And boom, stardom. And the same for you. It can be the same way.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And One Punch Man is very successful here in Canada, and I have seen the early artwork from One. And yeah, like you say, it looks very rudimentary. It looks like nobody would ever have taken it seriously, but the story is really what gets you in this idea of something that is the anti-superhero, is something that I think once we've got that superhero fatigue of watching too many Marvel movies, it's something that really captivates us, right? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now we'll open it up to viewer questions. But while you're typing them, I will just take the opportunity to let everyone know that the link to Hisham's work, Shinigami Sensei, is in the description of this live video. Please go and check it out. It's wonderful, and I think you'll have a lot of fun reading it.
Thank you.
So, viewer questions. Do we have any today? Okay, doesn't look like we have any right now, but I'll just We'll just hold on for just a second here and see if any come through. But was there anything else you wanted to add today, Hisham?
On the subject of One Punch Man, if I can continue with that, what I found interesting about One Punch Man, and for those who I have watched with, that they had difficulty with One Punch Man, is One Punch Man is a very top-down story. I feel Shinigami Sensei is actually similar to that, where we find the hero who's already very strong, already very powerful, and his goal isn't to gain more power, but to become normal, right? To kind of enjoy a give and take with a villain. This is, of course, in contrast to all the other animes. If you're talking about Naruto, if you're talking about One Piece, if you're talking about Bleach, all these different animes who are where the main character wants to get stronger, right? Especially Naruto, he always kept saying it, I'm going to get stronger and stronger. You talk about Dragon Ball Z, who also always trying to get stronger. One Punch Man is just trying to be a kind of like a normal person, kind of just the same level as everyone else, because his level's already so high. So my friends, especially those who were watching me, had difficulty. They're saying, I don't understand, he's already really strong. Where is he getting it? And then later on, they started to get that. And after I saw that, it made me feel a lot better about Shinigami Sensei, because my character is supposed to be like the tip-top mercenary, and then he's supposed to be the strongest, and he wants to become a teacher. So he moves from, adventure and action, and he wants a very humdrum job as a high school teacher. So that's where I find a similarity between Shinigami Sensei and One Punch Man.
I really enjoyed that, actually, when I was reading Shinigami Sensei, seeing that, like you say, he's looking for routine. Your hero there is looking for routine, and but the memories keep coming back, and I really love that introduction to the story. It's wonderful.
I'm glad you did. Thank you.
So I do have a question here from Matt Smith.
Matt!
So what differences have you seen in audiences from country to country based on conventions that you've been to?
Okay. Plenty of differences, actually. If we want to talk about Kuwait, so Kuwait has a very small kind of like, I don't want to say cult, but it's like a very small audience for those who like anime and manga and who enjoy the conventions. What I love about going to conventions in Kuwait is that I see the same faces. It's like I'm hanging out with my friends. They come by. It's the same guy I saw maybe like 6 months ago, and we chat and we laugh and we pick up where we left off from since the last convention. So it's like the same faces, and it's really great. And then it grows bit by bit, but it's kind of like you see them age in and age out. That's the Kuwaiti audience. The Emirati audience, when I was in Dubai, is very diverse, because you get people who were traveling just for that convention. You had people coming from Saudi Arabia, you had people coming from around the Emirates, people coming from Kuwait, around the world, just to meet the big stars. So there we had, I had a lot of new faces, people who were interested in comics for very different reasons. That was the Emirates. I had done a convention in Japan that was a year ago. It was called Comitia. And this one was probably the most challenging for me. And if you want to talk about the audience, it's completely different. My biggest thing I do in Kuwait when I want to sell is I have a very big selling character, a big selling personality. So I kind of pull people into my table, I make conversation, I comment on their clothing, and it's just a way that you get people interested in you, and then they become interested in your work. In Japan, you couldn't do that at all. The people are very timid, or especially those who are coming to those conventions are very timid and very nervous. In Kuwait, I can notice a difference in my sales if I'm standing or if I'm sitting at my booth. If I'm standing, I can say 20% more sales. In Japan, the moment I stood up, we had a whole lane of artists. That lane disappeared. We had no audience in that lane. So they were very timid, and I had to follow suit with the rest of the artists and kind of sit down and kind of just not make so much of a presence, because the Japanese people who go to these conventions, they enjoy kind of just pick up a book at their own leisure. If they like it, they take it. If they don't, they put it down. So it's really completely different when you move around. I am yet to try a convention in the States or Canada, although I'm very interested in doing so. So we'll see. But that's my experience so far.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And yeah, I've heard that about Japan a lot, is with the cultural practices and the kind of social timidness. But here in Canada, very much the same as what you describe about Dubai. People want to see everything, and they're not afraid to interact. And um, you're expected as a seller to have that real big personality, and yeah. But they're a nice experience. You get to meet a lot of people at these conventions in Canada. So hopefully you
That's
can
great.
come over at some point. And
Oh, inshallah, I plan on it.
yeah, yeah, it'd be great to see you in person if you decide to come to the Saskatoon Comic Con. Um, so that looks like all the questions for today. And Hisham, I've got to be honest, this has been a wonderful experience. I've really enjoyed this.
Such a
Um,
pleasure, Mark. Thank you for being here.
yeah, no, thank you for joining me. And thank you to
Mm.
everybody that tuned in. I really appreciate it. And we will see you all soon.
All right.
Like, share, subscribe.